yet to give to our students. So in my previous video, we discussed on what is government. We define government as the body or machinery that is responsible for the implementation, formulation, and execution of government policies. And we said without government, the society will degenerate into anarchy. It will degenerate into chaos. There will be a breakdown of law and order. So in every society, government is indispensable. Government is mandatory. And government must function effectively. And we also mentioned that the government we're talking about here is responsible for the formulation, execution, and implementation of government policies. And that government has some agencies or ministries and parastatals and bodies that are responsible for the execution and the formulation of these government policies. And we also stated that a society would degenerate into anarchy when there is no government, because it will exhibit man's inhumanity to man. So government is very important in every society. So we now said that government has some characteristics. It has some features or some attributes. In case in the exam they ask you, what are the attributes? What are the characteristics? What are the features of government? They are still talking about the same thing. Now these features, these attributes, or these characteristics are what we're going to discuss. I will be mentioning 4 of them now. One of the attributes of government is political power. The second one is revenue. The third one is law making. And the fourth one is the civil service or personnel. Now, I will quickly go through them one after the other. Now, if you look at our lectures, they are very, very simple. We are trying to come down to the level of our students where they will be able to understand our language properly. But never mind, sometimes I will be giving out some grammatical, some big words. So sometimes you might need to have your dictionary beside you to be able to accentuate these words. Now, what are the attributes of government? What are the characteristics? Or what are the features of government? Like I've stated earlier, attributes, features, and characteristics are the same. And I've mentioned 4 characteristics. I said number 1, political power. Number 2, lawmaking. Number 3, revenue. And number 4, personnel. Now, let's go to number 1, political power. What is political power? Political power is an attribute of government. It's an instrument of government. Without political power, government is incapacitated. Government cannot function effectively. So one of the instruments that is used by the government to govern the state, to ensure that people are compliant to the body of rules and regulation, to ensure that people obey the rules and regulation, or they obey the constitution of the country, is the political power. So if the government does not have political power, the government is weak and will not function effectively. So in every governmental state, in every state where there is an existence of government, one of the attributes of the government is the political power. So for government to function effectively, for government to be efficient, for government to be able to carry out its whims and caprices, for the government to be able to perform efficiently, then the existence of political power is very, very paramount. It is indispensable. The government cannot do without political power. So political power in every state is very, very important. It allows the government to be able to carry out its onerous duties, its numerous duties, its multidimensional duties effectively. So government requires political power to function very, very well. Number 2, lawmaking. Number 2 again, lawmaking. In every state, like I stated earlier in my previous video, there are laws in every society. Laws are made for man to be obeyed. So every citizen in the states and every non-citizens in the states, as long as they are within the territorial area of the state, must abide by the rules and regulations. What are we saying? What we're saying here is that in every state there are rules and regulations, and these rules and regulations, they form the basis of the Constitution. And the Constitution is an instrument that is used to regulate the activities of the government and the governed. So in every state, we have the government and the governed. So government makes rules and regulations. Government makes laws that are meant to be obeyed by everybody in the society. So one of the attributes of the state or the government is law making. The third one is revenue. I say again, revenue. Without revenue, government cannot function effectively. Now, the revenue we are talking about here is what the government uses in carrying out its numerous projects and activities in the states, like the payment of what? Of salaries of what? Of civil servants. Like they use it also to carry out a lot of projects, and they also use part of this money to service government loans, whether internal loans or external loans. So what we're saying here is that for the government to be able to function effectively, for the government to be able to carry out its duties, for the government to be able to perform effectively, then government requires revenue. The revenues that are generated by the government is used in carrying out so many things in the states, like the provision also of infrastructural facilities, or the provision of what? Of services to the citizens. Then the fourth one is, I've mentioned number 1, I said political power. I've mentioned number 2, lawmaking. I've mentioned number 3, revenue. Number 4 is personnel. Now, in a state where you have a president, the president cannot do everything by himself. The government, the president cannot perform all the duties by itself. And that is why under the executive arm of government, we have various departments. Now, government requires personnel. These personnel, they are called civil servants, or what we call civil service. They are in the civil service. So the personnel are individuals or people that are working for the government, and they are there to carry out various activities of the government. They are there to execute the policies of the government, and that is why under the personnel, we have various ministries like the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Mining, the Ministry of Defense. We have also what? Various departments. All these departments, all these ministries, they are under what we call personnel, and they carry out government policies. So in this topic now, we have been able to identify what are the characteristics of the government. I will say again, we are able to identify or state or explain what we mean by characteristics of a government. Now, like I said before, characteristics, attributes, and their features, they are the same thing. So if you have a question like that in the exam, you should be able to identify easily now and even expatiate what we mean by attributes, characteristics, and features of government. There are 4 of them. Number 1 is what we call revenue. Number 2, again, I might not be able to state them the way I've just explained to you, but it is still the same thing. So number 1, let's go back again. Political power. Number 2, lawmaking. Number 3, revenue. And number 4, personnel. Then let me give you a bonus: welfare. Another attribute of the government is welfare. Government provides welfare to the citizens. In advanced countries, government pay their citizens. They make sure that the citizens, they have a good standard of living. They have an improved standard of living. So welfareism is also an attribute of the government. Government must be able to provide the people with the basic needs and services. So take that as one of our bonus. So that makes it number 5, attributes and characteristics of government. So when we meet next again, we will be talking about the functions of government. From there, we'll pick it up to other topics. Now, if you notice, we are not using marker board or boards for now, but probably in our subsequent videos and upcoming lectures, we are going to be using marker boards, so that we might need to be writing most of these things on the board for most of our students, so that they can copy and write it down. Now, the benefit and essence of this thing is that you can download these videos. You can download these videos and listen to it over and over and over again. And by the time you listen to them, over and over again, you'll be able to understand very well what we are talking about. So until next time, see you.